Hey guys, Will here and welcome back to another painting tutorial. Now last time I did one of these I showed you how I paint an Eldar Jetbike in the Biel Tan colour scheme, but I only went as far as doing all the shading and the highlighting and all the colours on the model. What I haven't done yet is the Thorn pattern that's very distinctive and very well known for being part of the Biel Tan scheme. So today that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So I'm just going to switch this model around with this guy. Now this is one of the finished ones from my army, so as you can see you've got the complex thorn pattern on there. And I say complex because although it looks pretty complex, it's actually fairly simple to paint. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. Now when you're doing this, there's a few things you're going to need. First one is some sort of visual reference. If you've not done this type of stuff before, you're going to want to have something to work from to give you an idea of what you're doing. That can be a page from the Eldar Codex, a picture from the internet, just something to give you an idea of what you're working towards. Now for me, I've done a few of these already, so I'm actually going to use my existing jet bikes as my visual reference. And you're obviously going to need the model that you're working with, and then you're going to need your brush. Now for this you just need any brush with a good point. This is actually quite an old Citadel brush that's lost a lot of its bristles, but over time it's worked into a very nice point, so this brush is perfect for that because it keeps its point really nicely. And you'll probably all have a brush in your collection that you know you can kind of rely on to keep its point. And the final thing is Abaddon black base paint. The vine patterns can in theory be done in any colour, but Abaddon black is kind of the traditional black colour for them. So first thing you're going to want to do is prepare your paint. Now with the base paints they tend to be quite thick, so you're going to need to make sure you add some water to them. That applies with any paint, but particularly the base paints, and it's especially important when you're doing fine detail work because it will make it easier for you to control where the paint goes. But obviously you don't want too much water because you're not trying to turn this into a wash. You still want it to, have some sort of coherency to the brush. So I've already prepared some of that off to the side. I'm not going to try and move the camera, but basically you find your own sort of level of dilution that you're comfortable with. Get a bit of it on your brush, and then you just start to paint wavy lines. Now this is going to be a little tricky to do on the camera, but what I like to do is pick a point on the like the surface of the carapace and just start painting a long wavy line from that. There's obviously these vines are a natural thing, and that's what the Biel Tan are trying to emulate in their design. Something that's very natural. So the vines will go whichever way nature takes them. Don't worry if, like here, I've got a few bits where it's gone a bit thicker. We can actually use that to our advantage when we come to add the thorns to the vines. If you're not happy that the line's thick enough, you can just go back over and just make it a little bit thicker. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I've had another little splodge. This is a little fiddly to do because I've got an old paint pot holding my phone up, so the camera will stay in place while I do this. There we go. So that's one line, and then the vines tend to branch off each other. So we can, for example, use this point here where we went a little bit thick. Just get a little bit more paint on our brush and use that as the branching point. So you just have the vines go over across in another direction. And so there we've got another branch of the vine pattern coming off. And sometimes these vines will cross over each other, so for example we're going to have another branch come off here. Just make this first one a little bit longer, and then we're going to have this one branch over the top of it like that, just like real vines would in nature. Okay, Then what you want to do is, once you're happy with it, I'm probably going to do a little bit more to that, but you want to pick another point. Now on these jet bikes there's probably room for maybe 3 or 4 vines depending on how thick you want to make them, so I'm going to have another one that starts down here and just continue painting on as many vines as I feel like is going to be needed to make a nice pattern on here. So I'm going to switch the camera off now, go ahead and finish this up and show you what it looks like once the whole thing's done. So now we've drawn all the vines, it's time to paint on the thorns, and this is done in very much the same way. You just get some Abaddon black paint, a little bit watered down with a nice brush with a fine tip to it, and just start painting on little triangles branching off the sides of your vines. So for example here, you want one, and you just try and make them look a little bit sharp. You do need a very fine brush to pull that off, but the aim is to have them look a little bit sharp and pointy. And what you want to do is alternate them one side to the other going down the vine. So you just do one on the left, one on the right, etc. And you don't want to go right up to the tip, you just sort of want to leave the tip a little bit exposed, or not really exposed, like without the thorns on it, just because that's like the growing point of the vine. So you just work down all your vines doing this. You can always skip out one thorn if it's going to come too close to where another vine is branching off, and where you've got places like this where it's bulged a little bit, where the line hasn't gone entirely as it should have done, you can just use that as a starting point for one of the thorns, and it covers up your mistake, like there or up here on top of the carapace. And then you just continue to paint this up like this. It does take a little while to go through and do all of them, but for the final effect, when you get the whole pattern done, it does look really quite nice for a technique that isn't as hard as people think it is to do. Now on this jet bike I'm only working on the just the front carapace. The back parts I'm just leaving in green, that's just how I've chosen to do mine, but some of the artwork in the codex does actually show them going over the whole bike, so you can work over the whole bike if you want. That's totally up to you if that's the scheme you want to work with. And yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish painting on these vines and show you what it looks like when it's finished. There we go, so the thorn pattern is now pretty much complete. It's not come out quite as neatly on this guy as it has on some of my earlier models. I think that's because I was trying to film it at the same time, and I think I've done the thorns a little bit too dense on there, but overall I'm happy with it. And certainly as part of an army where they're all having this scheme, there's going to be variation. Some of them are going to have a more dense pattern, some of them are going to have a more dispersed pattern. So I hope you found this video interesting, and yeah, give it a try yourself. It is something that takes a little bit of practice, but you know, it's something that anyone can do. All you need is a good point on your brush, a little bit of patience and a little bit of a steady hand, but those last two are skills that can only really be developed. You can't you're not sort of born with them. You develop patience and you develop a steady hand, so you know, give freehanding something a go. And hope you enjoyed this video. Like I say, the only thing I need to do to finish this model now is to stick on the little transfer on the front, and I'm actually going to do that as another video, because when I first got into this hobby, transfers were something I found really difficult and really hard to use, but now I've kind of got a way of doing it, so I'm going to share that with you guys, so stay tuned for the next video. Thanks a lot, bye.